What's going on, guys? I'm back. It is episode 25? 25, right?
Welcome in, day oneers.
To the Day One Football Podcast. We're leaving all this in.
Oh yeah,
all
it's all
right, I'm
staying
with
in.
my two co-hosts. Yeah, it is, has to. Day One Big Mike and the Day One Daddy Stephen King. I'm back in the East Coast. So a long trip across Canada. Listen to the two podcasts while driving. How to download them on the drive. But it was good podcast, guys. You guys killed it. How are you guys doing today?
Doing good. Couple big fights coming up. Gonna gonna have a COVID keg, but how are you doing, Steve?
Yeah, I wasn't gonna make it to the COVID keg party with Mike, but luckily it got canceled, so it's not like I'm missing anything. I believe I actually have a matchup against Mike this week in fantasy in a keeper league, so it'll be a good one. We'll keep you updated after I kick his ass this time.
Yeah, just like you kick his ass in DraftKings.
I don't
He
want to
was
talk about that.
he was too
Yeah, I
scared,
know.
so he canceled the competition this week. But that's a story for another day.
No, man,
Yeah.
don't even say that. I even had an extra person lined up. It was gonna be a fight to the death between three people, and then apparently if you don't fill the lobby, I think that's what happens. The lobby was set to five. We only had three, and then it didn't register as a game. And I hope I got my $1 back because that's good. That's supposed to last me the full season.
Yeah, you
So
need it.
pretty
I
pissed
saw the
off.
invite and I was like, I'm not doing this. I'll join next time. But that being said, along with Have a Day, and then we got to finish up some sell highs, buy lows, three cuts, and top waiver wire ads. So without further ado, let's jump into that A1 news. So we got injuries off the top. Number one, Raheem Mostert, 3 weeks to miss due to a high ankle sprain. He was placed in the IR. So it's time to start those Jerick McKinnons again. And Jermichael Hasty, I guess, because Tevin Coleman's still injured, guys. So what do you think, Mike?
Yeah, Mostert going on IR basically means that he has to miss at least 3 games. As you guys know, there's high ankle sprains. They don't really come back the same player. Uh, Jermichael Hasty actually out-snapped Jerick McKinnon and outpaced him in carries. He's definitely a sneaky waiver wire ad. There was a random non-activation of Jeff Wilson this week, so that might have been why. So keep an eye on Jeff Wilson. If he's activated, then Hasty won't really be that great of a value, but I like Jerick McKinnon this week. I think that he'll go back to where he was when Mostert was out. But Steve, what's your opinion on this?
Yeah, I agree. I would start Jerick McKinnon this week against the Patriots. As much as that is, you don't really normal seasons, you don't want to start people against the Patriots. But I like Jerick McKinnon because this is a run first team, and he is going to be the number one guy. I don't. The issue is if Jeff Wilson's back. Jeff Wilson is the red zone kind of back. He scores touchdowns when you don't want him to. We'll just say that. So Jerick McKinnon actually has been pretty good for touchdowns this year, but for some reason you start whoever you want on the 49ers, but somebody else will score the touchdowns no matter what. I'm okay with McKinnon. I wouldn't want any other running back on that team right now. Colin?
Yeah, so I don't know. Hasty looks like he'll be interesting. I don't know if he'll be a factor, fantasy-wise at least, but 9 carries for 37 yards, 4.1 yard to carry. He looked pretty good with his limited amount of time on the field, and now with their top dog missing out of the backfield, and you know how Shanahan likes to move the ball around with different backs. So I think there could be a potential excitement out of that guy. Like he might have something where it's like, oh, this guy shows a little bit more flair. Boom, boom, boom. He's up a little bit more in the depth chart, but we'll see on Sunday. Moving on, Miles Sanders not to practice I guess today with a knee injury. They were saying it might have been an MCL thing, but Schefter said he's going to miss to at least 1 to 2 weeks. Mike, do you have any more info on that?
No info, but definitely pick up Boston Scott. Maybe even take a flyer on Corey Clement if you're in a deep league and somebody already has Scott, but not really much to add. They didn't really come out saying any info about the specific injury, just that he was getting an MRI Monday, and nothing really came out of that. But Steve, do you know anything else?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but this game that the Eagles are playing will be on Thursday, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, so Boston Scott would be the start there. I don't think Sanders will be ready for a Thursday game. If it was the Sunday game, it would be closer. But Thursday, I don't see Sanders, and especially with people saying he might miss up to 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. I've also heard that. So Boston Scott, I believe, would be a good start. The Giants' defense has been surprisingly good. So if you have other options, obviously start your other options. But if you're looking for a waiver wire ad, we will bring up Boston Scott later in this podcast. Colin.
Yeah, their defense is like ranked fifth, surprisingly. So I don't know how that will work, especially with that no O line that the Eagles have. But we can move on. So moving on, another Eagle injury. Zach Ertz out 3 to 4 weeks with a high ankle sprain. Uh, I guess you start Dallas Goedert because he had a couple of weeks where he flashes and he's obviously a familiar target for Wentz. So Mike, any thoughts?
One thought would be that Dallas Goddard is still on IR, so
Oh,
do not start him.
oh no!
But
I thought he was on.
instead,
Oh, oh,
ins-
I'm an idiot.
instead you could start Richard Rogers. He's basically the starter, and I mean, he's not bad. He's a big dude, 257, 6'4". I don't know. Steve, you got anything else?
Yeah, I would say if you had to start somebody, this is a Thursday game, so I'm avoiding pretty much all of these backup. Like, I don't want to start Boston Scott. I don't want to start Rogers here. But if you have to, he would be the pivot. I'm not going to personally. He's not even close to anywhere on my way. I'm pretty sure I have two defenses and two kickers above where I would put him in my waiver wire ads this week. So he's not even looked at. But if it's a deep league and you need a guy because you have for some reason have Goddard and Ertz and somebody else that's on the IR, then he'd be the guy that I would pivot to. Colin.
Yeah, so just double checked. Yeah, so it said he'll miss at least 3 weeks. So he should be on pace to come back this week. I don't think it will happen. Most likely week 8, but he's mostly dropped in most keeper and redrafts. I would definitely recommend probably picking up Goddard this week if you just have like room on your bench because that guy has shown that he is a very a favorite target of Wentz. So yeah, week 9 against Dallas with that terrible defense, I think Goddard could eat, but that'll be next week's waiver wire. But we can just say right now, like if you have the opportunity, maybe pick him up just on a flyer because he's gonna be back next week for sure. Um, yeah, good skills, Colin. Good job doing analytic stuff. So next, Darius Slayton. He's limited at practice. Might be ready for Thursday. It's very tight, with those Thursday games, and they obviously have other weapons. They don't have to risk it, but with their season the way it is going, maybe they do play him. Mike, any thoughts?
Um, Not really. I think that a foot injury could be anything from it just being sore to it being a serious injury, but I really don't see this as a big issue. If he's limited, he's still practicing, which means that it's a good sign. Like look at Mixon, I believe it was a foot injury, but he came back in the game. I don't see any really issues with Slayton. I just don't really like that game at all. The NFC East is by far
The
the
best league,
worst
right?
division,
The best division,
but
right?
by far the worst division. So there's
You
like
mean best?
100 meters of trash, and then there's the NFC East and the Jets. But yeah, I just don't want to touch this game. Steve, what are you thinking here?
Yeah, I don't want to touch this game either. But Slayton is somebody who can pop off and have big games. We've seen that this season already, and Eagles defense isn't great. This is something you'd have to, if you're going to play Slayton, he'd be a flex play, but obviously start him in your wide receiver slots, just in case you need to pivot due to injury last minute. So Slayton, wide receiver 3, that's where I would have him if he plays. We will know more tomorrow when we record, because I believe we will be recording tomorrow as well. So hopefully we have the Wednesday practice reports, and we will let you know about Slayton tomorrow. Colin?
Yeah, and on top of that too, they could be just resting him today. They don't need to risk it, right? Especially when they have a couple of days till the game. So yeah, definitely got to keep that in mind. Next on the list, Jonnu Smith with a minor ankle sprain. He is day to day. Yeah, just unfortunate. This guy's a beast. He's the tight end like 3 and 2, I believe, until like Sunday when he got that injury that took him out of the game. But um, yeah, I think John will be playing Sunday, no problem. I think he was making jokes on Twitter, so I think he's okay. He's not going to be hiding or anything, ducking it. So, Mike, what do you think on Johnnu's minor ankle sprain?
I think it's not a big deal. They don't have to rush it because they have an absolute stud behind them named Anthony Ferkser. This guy absolutely popped off this past weekend, going for 113 yards and a touchdown on 8 receptions. Looking at his analytics profile, he's basically a big slot receiver. In my opinion, he's not really that fast, which lines up, and he's very agile. He had a great college dominator score and everything like that. So maybe even a sneaky ad in Dynasty, but I don't think it's a really big deal. Jonnu, I think that he'll be fine. Steve, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I think Johnny will be there. I wouldn't worry too much. Anthony Frickser, I've never even heard of this guy before his big game last game. I personally don't. I'm not picking him up in any leagues, even dynasty leagues. I wouldn't even look at him. I think Johnu is going to be their guy, and Frickser really maybe in a dynasty league in case Johnu gets hurt. But yeah, I'm not really looking at him.
Yeah, I'm not considering picking up a backup tight end. I don't think he's gonna have much relevance, especially now that Brown's back. But yeah, if Johnu misses time, then maybe if you're the John O. Smith owner, maybe take a quick pivot at the end on like a Saturday if he's still there. Uh, he should be, but people like to jump on the waiver wire pretty quickly, pick up guys like that are just trending. So be interesting to see how Titans use him going forward. Next on the list, Mr. Joe Mixon was able to play the end of the game. Was held out. They're waiting on more info. It was a foot injury. Mike, did you read anything else talking about the waiting on the info part?
No, nothing much. Just I think they were supposed to hear back either tomorrow or later, like tonight. But yeah, nothing too much. He looked fine in the game, but you really never know with the foot injuries, of course. So, Steve, got anything else on your boy?
No, you pretty much just explained everything. Um, from what I understand, is they're still waiting on information about it. That I think is a good sign. Usually, if it's really bad, they'll have the information pretty quickly. So I'm going to assume that it's very minor injury and that he'll be able to play this upcoming week. So, Colin.
It's Geo time. Geo season. No, it's
Yuck.
not.
Yuck.
Yuck, gross.
No.
So this last one on the injuries, this is not fantasy related per se, but it could potentially impact a fantasy player. It is Taylor Lewan towards ACL, the left tackle for the Titans, like O line, and Henry's a beast behind the O line, but maybe losing one of their key O line men, this could affect Derek Henry. What do you think, Mike?
I think that this is actually a fairly big loss for the Titans. I know he he's a great player, but he's an even better almost a glue guy, and I hate saying that, but honestly, he keeps the guys together. He talks about it a lot on his podcast how he he does a lot with them and everything like that. I think this is a big loss, and I don't really see it affecting Henry in the grand scheme of things, but it'll definitely be something to get used to, and he might struggle a bit. And who knows? Maybe Lawan was the glue that held that line together. Steve, what are you thinking here with Lawan out?
It will impact a little bit at least. You'll see. I can't see. Actually, it's really hard to say. It's really hard to say who's going to step up and help out. Um, this is something that you can't really tell until you watch the game without him on the field. So Henry could be completely fine and run for another 200 yards. Who actually knows? Like this, we're just gonna have to wait. And next game, terrible matchup against Pittsburgh. So uh, we'll have to wait. Maybe even the week after that against the Bengals, we'll figure out more for the rest of the season and where we have Henry and potentially Tannehill too. So, Colin.
It was gonna be a great game though. Two undefeated teams going against each other, but that linebacker room with the Steelers is nasty. So yeah, definitely gonna see what happens there. Yeah, so let's go on to the football news segment. We only got one thing really to touch on. Not really fantasy related this week, but if he's on your waiver wire, maybe pick him up. Tua finally announced as the starter for the Dolphins after their bye week. He'll be in Week 8 playing against, I think it was the Giants. I could be
The
wrong.
Rams?
The Rams. Yeah, yeah, that's right. Because I saw Aaron Donald's going to play against them, and after Alex Smith just played against him, so two guys that could have ended their careers could have ended off the hip injury with Tua. Now he has to take on one of the best defensive linemen in the game. So, it was a weird move. If I have to really say my opinion, I think Fitz has been perfectly fine yet, and obviously we're waiting for that 6 picks in the first half, and then Tua would be like, "All right, it's your time, guy." But yeah, interesting that they announced it so soon and so early, but especially because the Rams now know that he's going to be starting. But Mike, any thoughts?
I think that this was honestly the plan all along. And by that, I mean starting them after their bye week. Originally, their bye week was about week 11, if I remember correctly. But with the schedule changing because of COVID, it moved it up to this coming week, meaning that Tua is now going to be the starter from here on out. He did get in the game this past week, looked fairly good. I mean, it was a blowout, so he handed the ball off through 2 passes, made really good decision making. Basically, I think this is a great move, and I think that Fitz is going to be there to help him this week. And even if Fitz was going to be the starter this week, if they were practicing, they were going to start. They were going to have Tua in as the starter in practice, anyways. So might as well just make him the starter, anyways. But
Mm-hmm.
Steve, what are you thinking with this whole Tua Fitz situation? Because personally, I'd love to see Fitz go to Dallas.
I think Fitz is going to stay with Miami personally, and I do agree with you. And I think this was beginning of the season. They decided, and they probably even talked to Fitz about this. And he seems like a really understanding guy. And they probably went to him and said, "Hey, we drafted Tua. We still want you to be our guy for this until the bye week, and then we want to see what we have with this guy." And I'm sure he was down. Like, did you see how excited he was when
Yeah,
Tua got in the game?
Oh man, I
So
absolutely loved it.
so
he's
he was
fired
so
up.
fired up. He was like Tua's number one fan out there. So I think this was done before the season even started, and I think Fitz was on board with it just from the reaction that I saw. But he has some pretty rough matchups. So Aaron Donald, and then the Cardinals shouldn't be too bad because their best pass rusher is out for the year, if I remember correctly. But then they have the Chargers, who have a really good defense. The Broncos, who have been playing really well, who just destroyed Cam Newton,
Let's
and
go.
then he should rip apart the Jets in week 12, no problem. But still, like you the Rams, the Chargers, and the Broncos, 3 of the next 4 weeks. He has a rough schedule coming up. So I'm excited to see what he can do. But yeah, Colin.
Yeah, and obviously they're still in rebuild mode. So if it doesn't go well, who cares? I mean, they're 3-3. They're actually ahead of the Patriots in their division right now and the Jets. So I mean, they're in a playoff hunt right now. But it's funny. Speaking on the Jets, 24-0 loss. When is this guy getting fired? When is Gase getting fired? Honestly, like it's ridiculous that this guy's still a head coach.
Never.
Couldn't even
Dude.
figure anything out in that. That game looks so bad. That was such a bad game to watch. I don't understand how this guy's still the
Dude,
job.
but their offense is in
It's mind-blowing to
hyperdrive.
me.
Hyperdrive. Yeah, I think
You
they're
see
going to keep
Flacco, he
him
still has
for the
some
rest of the
legs, though.
season. I think they'll keep him this.
Elite.
Yeah, I think he'll keep Gase because they're going to tank for Trevor. That's like a surefire way is keeping him in.
Do you?
So
What
I
do,
mean,
what do you
Man,
do
if
with
I'm
Darnold
Trevor,
then? What do you do with Darnold? Like, I like Darnold. I think Darnold's a great QB, but he needs to go to a team that can actually let him play some football because we saw Darnold when he's healthy. Did you not see the train wreck of the Jets last year when he was out with mono and then he came back and actually made the offense look somewhat almost decent? I actually like Darnold as a
Mhm.
QB, and I think that if he were on a different team, like he has decent weapons. Like Crowder's decent. I don't know. Like we haven't really seen Mims because Mims has been injured this year, but like he has some weapons, but the offense just is terrible. The O line just looks really bad, and Gase is just the worst person. And I guarantee, if Gase gets fired this year, he's gonna go somewhere else and ruin another franchise, either as an offensive coordinator or he'll be hired somewhere because I don't know why the
God, I
NFL for
hope
some
not.
reason loves this guy.
I can't.
dude, I
That stat
I
line was
love
just
Gase.
nuts. No, you
I
don't.
love Gase. Oh yeah, I do because he is the definition of failing upwards, and I absolutely love it. But
It just
yeah,
makes no sense.
that's the only reason.
Well, it's just like, hey, remember that one time I had the best offense in the league? You know, riding the coattail of the best quarterback in the league at the time. But yeah, remember that? It's like everyone's like, yeah, I do remember that. Let's hire him.
Steve should remember that.
Oh, I remember that.
Manning was actually running all the plays, and he's just like, go sit down. It's fine. Just go sit down.
But
There.
yeah, this is the thing: is like Manning actually, Manning's been talking him up this whole time, and yet
I know.
it's so weird that Manning is just like, yeah, he's a great he's a great head coach because he let you do whatever the hell you wanted to. That's why. Like, come on, Darnold's a rookie. Do not let him do whatever he wants. Come on.
Well, it's like McCarthy. Like you just look at what he's doing with Dallas, and you're like, oh my god, the guy needs a quarterback. If he literally rides the franchise of Rodgers, and then now he's like, oh, Dak's injured. Well, that's what we got now. Just like, just these guys can't coach, and it's just crazy how bad they're just ruining this team. And if I'm Trevor Lawrence, I'm not. If they draft me that day, I'm saying I'm not going. I would be like, yeah, I'm gonna pull a Eli Manning and just be like, no, it's fine.
I would do that. I'd be like, no.
Actually, I wouldn't even declare for draft. I'd just be like, I'm gonna stay another year and just do my senior year at Clemson. I'll have more fun there.
Okay, so as of right now, it looks like the Jets are gonna be the worst team. But I think with Darnold there, if they do take Lawrence, then Darnold's gone. But who is in the market for Lawrence or Sammy Boy? Who is like? Do you think the Bears are gonna look into it at all?
Yes.
Washington, maybe
Washington,
Ooh, Washington's a good one. Who else?
the
the
Browns.
Broncos.
No, man, Drew Lock is yeah. Baker's gone.
Oh yeah, the Browns stink.
Baker. I love.
Uh,
Yeah, Baker's probably not staying, but
Well, but
realistically, I look at the Bears. I look at the Browns because I just don't see Baker as that great. And then I look at
Patriots.
Washington. I don't look at the Patriots because I think
I
they'll
think
take
Cam stays.
someone. Yeah, I think they'll either keep Cam or get someone. And then there's a couple fringe teams that if they don't, I mean, the Cowboys,
Jacksonville.
like the
Ooh, I don't
Cowboys,
know.
if they don't
You want
sign
Minshew to lose
Dak,
his job?
Oh, I love Minshew. I just think that if you have a chance at sixth round quarterback Minshew or Trevor Lawrence, you trade up for Trevor Lawrence.
mhm.
Do you think they trade Darnold then? Because if they draft Lawrence, they have to trade Darnold. So what are you getting for Darnold? because he hasn't
I
really
think
improved. He hasn't shown much since it's not a first round pick probably.
no, I think you could get
No,
a first. I think you get a first.
I think
Too
Did
late.
did Arizona not get a second for
Josh Rosen, I think
I
so.
guess
Rosen?
yeah.
And
But
Rosen
Yeah.
was terrible.
so the thing with that though is there was a lot of contracts still left. With Darnold, there's even less, so there is less control, if that makes sense. So teams will take that and try and prob. I think he goes for a second, as bad as that is to say. I think a second would do it. I mean, I think a second you could possibly get a late first, say if the Bears make the playoffs, which it's
Hmm.
looking like I love that they're 5-1 and that they're not stopping. But if a late first would do it probably, but if they get in the playoffs and they make a run, I don't think they get rid of Foles. So
Well, you
Uh,
could even look at the Steelers or the Colts with their aging QBs too, right?
yeah, that's true.
hmm Colts would be
Definitely.
a very good option
There's a
too. Phil Rivers
or
doesn't look very good anymore.
what about the Eagles?
Uh, I I
Everyone
don't hate
hates
Wentz, but
Carson
like
Wentz.
God, they don't like him there. They hate his guts,
Oh, I guess
which is
they got
funny.
Jalen Hurts, so never
Yeah,
mind.
they actually said we didn't put this in the news, but I guess we can just bring it up right now. Jalen Hurts is apparently going to be more involved in the offense moving forward. I don't know if it's going to be him like wild carding it, like as a running back almost, but he's definitely going to be, or even a wide receiver, even because the
I,
injuries.
I
But yeah,
I see him as a Taysom Hill, basically. Personally, like not as
man, I don't
running,
understand why the
because I
Saints
mean
love
Taysom
him.
Hill is basically a tight end because Drew Brees is done.
Yeah, I know, but you have
He has
Jameis,
a
so like
noodle arm.
let's put they have Jameis, so like let's put in Hill to run up the middle for 3 yards. It's
Yeah,
like
but
why just put him as a fullback?
when he gets a head of steam going, I mean he's
Oh,
pretty quick.
He's a tank, and he's
Yeah,
like huge. He doesn't look like a quarterback at all. He's built, but he
so
should be
that's
his
why they don't put in
fullback.
Jameis.
But let's move on.
So
Let's just move on
yeah,
from these yucky quarterbacks and talk about the have a day segment. So let's start it off with QBs as always. Number 1, Deshaun Watson. 2, Matty Ice. Number 3, Tannehill. Number 4, Wentz. Number 5, Kyler Murray. Number 6, Lamar Jackson. Number 7, Kirk Cousins. Number 8, Philip Rivers. Number 9, Jimmy G. And number 10, Patrick Mahomes. Mike, who do you want to talk on today?
I'll talk about the guy that absolutely dominates Joe Burrow in every statistical category, including children, and that is Philip Rivers. He actually looked fairly decent, which was weird. I have him in one of my leagues as a super flex QB. I mean, he this is a typical Phil Rivers game. Threw for 66% for 371 yards, 3 touchdowns, but he always throw an interception. I mean, he's had terrible weeks. I think that this will be the start of something else. I think he's starting to figure out the offense, and he's starting to get his tight ends involved, which we'll bring up in the waiver wires. But yeah, I think Phil Rivers had a great day, and I think that it's the sign of things to come. So, Steve, who's your guy?
So I just wanted to point out that Kyler Murray is on here, and his completion percentage was it looked like Josh Allen from last year
It
with
looked
the
like it looked like
yeah
Cirque football.
yeah it looked like he was not good. 38% completion percentage, and they still dominated the game, and he still ended up as a top 5 QB on the weeks, which is insane. I wanted to talk about Kirk Cousins, and it's mostly because I just traded for him in a keeper league. Um, pretty big deal. No, his his uh, his fantasy output was because he threw 3 interceptions to start the game, and then he had to come back, and the Atlanta defense just allowed him to come back because it's the Atlanta defense. So just you see Kirk Cousins up here, just chill a little bit. He shouldn't be, and forget about it. He's not a top 10 guy, Colin.
Yeah, before I say my guy, what's funny about Philip Rivers though? It was against the Bengals. So can we really be like, yeah, he's back. He's all the way back. That Bengals team is
Yes.
brutal. 21-0 lead, and they just collapsed. Unfortunate for Joey B. But my guy, I think, is gonna be Mr. Matt Ryan. He's back. You know what? He's back with a bang, and I think it's because Julio is back. So, I mean, 30 for 40, 75% throwing, 371 yards again, 4 touchdowns, better than Rivers. And on top of that, he did not throw a pick. And, I think it's just not much really to talk on. The Falcons are going to Falcon, and this guy's just going to throw bombs every week in and week out. And I don't think this will go away much. I think Matt Ryan should consistently be in this 1 to 10 range, especially if he has Julio there, because Julio's just, as Steven loves him, he's a top 8 guy every year for like the last 7 years. So that was a long time ago when we talked about that, but it just, when you have a weapon like that, then you have Ridley, and then, even Russell Gage has shown flair from here and there. So he has weapons. He's going to keep chucking it. Also, even Hayden Hurst had a sick week. So Matt Ryan has the targets, he has the weapons, and he's going to keep firing bombs. So Matt Ryan is my guy. So moving on, we got some running backs. So Mr. Tractosito, number 1, Kenyon Drake, number 2, 3, DeAndre Swift coming out of nowhere, finally gets some carries for once. Number 4, Ronald Jones. Number 5, CEH. Number 6, James Conner. Number 7, Myles Gaskin. Number 8, Joe Mixon. Number 9, Jonathan Taylor. And number 10, David Johnson. Mike, who you got?
I got the man in Detroit, and that is DeAndre Swift. He had an absolute great game, but it was mostly because of a 50-plus yard run that basically any running back could have ran through the hole in the offensive line. But after he got through that hole, he was quick. He looked like he was shot out of a cannon. And that's something that I love to hear. His snap percentage was at 38%, which kind of concerns most people. But for me, 38% of snaps, he got goal line carries, he got in the end zone. I see it as a great game, and I see him possibly increasing his snap share and slightly pushing out Kerryon Johnson for his snaps and pushing out AP for a couple of his snaps. But if you want to know a stat line, it was 14 carries for 116 yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 receptions for 7 yards. So overall, a decent fantasy day, landing him at the 3 spots. Steve, who are you talking about?
I will be talking about James Conner. I'm actually excited for James Conner, and I was a little low on him to begin the year. I expected more from the rest of the backs in the Steelers' backfield, but I just wanted to quickly bring up that there are 3 rookie running backs in this top 10 this week. That's pretty cool. Swift, who stinks, and then CEH and JT. So it's just cool to see these young guys, even though there are a bunch of injuries and whatnot going on. So back to James Conner. He went off for 26 rushing attempts. Just kidding. 20 rushing attempts, 101 yards, 5.1 a carry, and a touchdown. That's pretty good. I mean, it's what you expect from Conner. I'm actually high on him for the rest of the season. I want him in every league that I can get him in. If you can play the injury-prone card with the owner of James Conner and somehow swindle them into just trading James Conner away, go for it, because I think he's going to be a top 10 guy rest of season, and I think he might squeak into the top 5 near the end of season. So just keep an eye on him and try to trade for him if you can. Colin?
Yeah, just touching on James Conner. Yeah, against the Browns, really good rush defense. He looked great, like a really explosive watching him all game. Definitely looks like he's back to the old James Conner we knew from a couple of years ago. And also touching on DeAndre Swift, you know what's even more crazy about that 14 attempts? That's more attempts. He's had less attempts in the first 4 weeks of the season than that game. 1 week he didn't even have a single snap at running back, rushing attempt. So it's insane that they're finally using this kid, and he's finally finding some stride there. So I mean, regardless, it was a 50-yard run to really pump up his stats. I mean, the guy looks great. My guy's gonna be Myles Gaskin, and funny thing, I traded him for a first again in my dynasty. So I picked up 2 waiver wire running backs and traded them both for first round picks. So I'm feeling pretty good about it. James Robinson was the first one, now Myles Gaskin. But the thing with Gaskin that just really stands out to me when you watch him is he looks small, but he's very explosive when he gets his attempts, and they like using him in all aspects of the game. He had 4 receptions, 35 yards in this game. Also 18 attempts for 91 yards and 5.1 yards carry. He's having a tough time getting the touchdowns, but in a PPR and half PPR, he's catching 4 to 5 balls a game, and you love to see that with a running back. So I think Gaskin's going to keep going, and I don't know if he'll be there next year, but it's a fun story right now to see this guy do what he can. I think they might draft a bigger, like one of those higher prestigious, they have all those picks still. So I think like maybe one of those guys like a Hubbard or a Harris goes there next year. But I mean, for what he's doing with this, it's a very good story, and obviously, I think he was a 7th round pick, so him to be the guy and to beat out Howard and Breida, it's pretty good to see. So I hope he keeps going because he's fun to watch. But let's move on to the wide receiver section. So first we got Justin Jefferson. Mr. Julio Jones returns at number 2. 3, Christian Kirk came out of nowhere yesterday. And then Will Fuller. And then number 5, A.J. Brown. Number 6, Amari Cooper. Number 7, Brandon Cooks. Number 8, Keelan Cole. Number 9, Travis Fulgham. And number 10, Chase Claypool. Mapletron. Mike, what do you got?
Still the worst nickname, but whatever. I'm going to talk about Keelan Cole. And as everyone knows, I was really high on DJ Chark. He's still having a good season, but Keelan Cole seems to have a connection with Gardner Minshew. And he's making me eat my words. But Keelan Cole, 6 receptions, 143 yards. Didn't get a touchdown, but still ended up on the top 10. It's pretty good for wide receivers because usually they'll end up here with either a couple touchdowns or just one. But Keelan Cole just had an absolute day, and he might still be on the waiver wire for some of you. We've been telling you to pick him up, and I mean, this is why you listen to our podcast. So, Steve, who's your guy?
I want to talk about Will Fuller. He has been going off so far this year. He is the true number 1 on that team for Deshaun Watson. And we've seen a couple big games from Brandon Cooks, and we will talk about him shortly. But Will Fuller just looks like the guy right now. 11 targets in the last game. He had 8 in the previous game. He's put up 3 games already with 100 yards receiving, and he has 4 touchdowns because he's just a burner down the field and cannot be stopped. So he's another guy that I think if you play the injury-prone card to somebody and they're just like, yeah, you know what? He does get hurt often. Maybe I can get something good out of him. He'd be a guy that I would want to target. And maybe just wait until after this Green Bay game. If he has a little bit of a down game and they're going into a bye, you might be able to get him even cheaper because they're going to want somebody to start in week 8. And if he's on bye and he doesn't look good against Green Bay, you might be able to get Will Fuller for a discount. So he's somebody that I'd look at later on. Colin?
Yeah, so my guy's going to be the number 1 guy this week, Justin Jefferson, the rookie from LSU, man. This kid's been dominant on the Vikings. With Kirk Cousins, it seems like he has 2 great weapons. The kid, just like Steven said with Fuller, he's already popped off for 3 weeks, being over 100 yards, receiving almost 200 yards the first time. So, and even this past week with 166 yards through the air. So 9 catches, 2 touchdowns. He has 3 touchdowns on the year. 3 weeks have been really dominant, and then obviously he's had a couple of down weeks, but I think that's going to happen. He's kind of boomer bust at the moment. But obviously with Thielen, you got to pick and choose your weeks with those guys because Thielen's consistent, but I think Justin Jefferson's for those long bombs. It's either you're going to get it or not. So I like him a lot. I think he's a very interesting player, and if you picked him up in like the late first round in your dynasty draft for rookies, you're laughing right now because this kid looks great and he's going to continue to do this for years and years to come and only 21 years old.
What about if you dropped him in a dynasty league? How are you feeling?
Did Steven do that?
No, someone in our league did though.
Well, he's an idiot. I don't know who he is, but
who did they pick up, Mike?
Riley Ridley, who has been
Oh.
Oh
inactive.
yeah. Oh yeah. We talked about this a long time ago. I remember that now.
Yeah, yeah, he's not loving it, not loving the performances from Riley Ridley, but you know, whatever.
Oh man,
You
that's
make
that's
you make
tough.
you make mistakes.
Yeah. Don't we all? Don't we all? That's nuts. So let's move on to the tight ends and finish up the segment. So number one, Anthony Fritzker. Number two, George Kittle. Number three, Trey Burton. And number four, Travis Kelsey. Number five, Darren Fells. Mike, who do you got?
I don't like. I mean, there, there's two in here that are meant to be here. Trey Burton actually looked pretty good, which doesn't make me feel all that great because the Bears just released him. Although finally got some good tight end play this weekend, so I'm I'm kind of happy about that. But I mean, these are going to be guys that are going to go off the odd game, and I don't think there's really much to talk about. Steve, what are you saying?
I'm pretty sure, Mike. I'm pretty sure. I can't remember if it was this week or last week when we were talking about DFS plays. Darren Fells, you brought him up. And in my head, I was like, fucking Darren Fells. This guy, who cares about Darren Fells? But Mike, you had good call. This guy, 85 yards, one touchdown. I can't remember if it was for this week or last week, but regardless, he still put up a decent week the week before as well with a touchdown. So props to you. I watched a little bit of the game because I have Sean Watson in fantasy, and Darren Fells actually looks pretty good too. Now they were coming back in the game, and I think that's why you saw so many targets just in general for everybody. You see a lot of Texans on this list with Will Fuller and Brandon Cooks. So David Johnson was in the running back one as well. So it was just a high scoring game, and that's why you see him there. But I do like Darren Fells in fantasy rest of season as maybe a tight end two. I think you'll see him. I think you'll see him finish around like the 15, maybe 12 to 15 range. A streamer that you could start weekly, depending on the matchups. So I like Darren Fells, and Mike, good call on that, Colin.
Yeah, you guys basically touched on it. I don't think there's much more to say. Um, I don't know, man. Like it's always these tight ends. You're gonna see like random guys coming. Honestly, I don't think if John didn't get injured, I feel like it's Johnu up at the 1 and 2 and 3 range again, just because John is a beast. But also I appreciated Steven last week saying like Johnu was brought up by Colin. I'm like, yeah, he was because I love Johnu. But yeah, I don't know. It is what it is. I think we just move on from the tight ends in general. No one really wants to talk about them. So uh, let's move on to the last segment. We got our segment of three. We got some sell highs, buy lows, and three cuts. So, Mike, you want to start with your sell high?
My first sell high is the guy that I talked about in the have a day segment, and that's DeAndre Swift. But I'm going to preface this with saying that you should only sell him in redraft leagues. I don't. I think that you can get a solid haul for DeAndre Swift in a redraft league. If you can get a ridiculous haul for him in Dynasty, say from a Lions fan or someone like that, by all means trade him. But I don't know. I think that you can go and get someone that's more safe and has a higher floor, because as Colin said, there was a game where he didn't take a single carry. I don't think that's going to happen again, but the Lions stink and will always stink, and that will continue to be my message. Colin, go with yours.
Yeah, so mine's Kenyon Drake. And, I think the biggest factor in this is just the guys not look good. And I don't know if it's just because the Cardinals offense, they don't really like to run the ball. They have weapons like Kirk, this week popped off. Hopkins is, just arguably the top, one of the best receivers in the game. And even you got Larry Fitz, who's still, consistent and, he's still hanging out, still an older guy, but he's hanging out. So I think, and even that Isabella guy, he pops in for a couple touchdowns. So I feel like they don't really need to run the ball as much, but he just looks like, if you look at his week to week input, like his snap carries keep dropping, or count keeps dropping. And then this week he finally popped back up to around 70%, which is the most he's had. But he had 20 attempts for 164 yards, and that's very deceiving. But the thing is, if you have a manager who doesn't really pay attention to the actual game, they'd be like, oh, he popped off for like this much on 20 carries, but no, he had that one big carry that was like 69 yards to the house. So I think if you take that away, he's not even in the top 10. So he's a guy I don't like. He doesn't. Everyone thought he'd be getting more targets through the air. He is not. The most he's received is 2 in a game. It's just someone I don't really like. And for him to finally have a week that's relevant for fantasy and help guy, that's as soon as you see that, you gotta just pull trig and just sell this guy, because he's just gonna drop back down to like a 10-point player per week and like half. So yeah, I would sell him as immediately after this game, because you don't think it's also Dallas, and Dallas's defense is terrible, and they don't, so get rid of him as soon as you can. They're playing Seattle next week, and Seattle's rush defense is amazing, and it's just not going to be a good week for him. So get rid of him now before he has a bad week again. Steven?
Yeah, Kenyon Drake is one of those guys that I own, and I look at him every single week and I'm like, oh, I wish you were good, because you're on the field 70% of the time. And if DeAndre Swift was on the field 70% of the time, this guy would be an elite back in the league. And Kenyon Drake is one of those guys that I just refuse to like. I don't want to trade him because he has the volume, but then he does nothing with it's like David Montgomery.
Mm-hmm.
Him and David Montgomery are the same this year, and it sucks because there's no way you can trade them because you're not going to get the value that you want. But then you at that point, like half the time, you can't even start them. So I love the Kenyon Drake take. I like the Swift take too.
Hey, I would actually prefer Montgomery, because at least he catches the ball out of the backfield. Drake doesn't, and Drake
Yeah,
is a
that's
second
weird.
round pick, which sucks. Second round pick too. Like that's why it's such a stinky pick to look at more than anything else. Second round pick, most likely.
But yeah, I'm gonna move on to Brandon
Mm-hmm.
Cooks. And Brandon Cooks is here mostly because of the last 2 games that he put up. 17 fantasy points against the Titans week 6 and 26 fantasy points against Jacksonville in week 5. The week before that, do you guys know how many fantasy points he had against the terrible Minnesota defense?
I remember a certain owner complaining because he got goose egged.
0 points. So I think Brandon Cooks is going to be okay, but I think if you can sell him high for these last 2 games that he put up, I think you're going to get great value. If you want to try to trade for an RB2, maybe possibly, maybe try to get one of these running backs that are injured right now coming back. If you could try to get Nick Chubb, or maybe even Brandon Cooks and somebody else on your team for a CMC, maybe. I think you should do that. So I'm trying to sell him high. I'm going to try to get great value for him because I think he's going to be good for the rest of the year, but he's not going to be a consistent 15 plus point guy in fantasy. Colin?
Mm-hmm. So we'll go on to buy lows now, and Mike, your guy.
So my buy low is going to be a guy that got injured this weekend, and that's Miles Sanders. I think you might be able to buy him low because people see an injury, and I mean you're not going to buy him for nothing, like some people may be, but I think that he's slightly discounted because maybe someone isn't really paying attention and up on all the news. I still see him as coming back as the 3 down back, and I mean if you can get him for a reasonable price, I can't think of one off the top of my head. I really depend on the other owner. I kind of just go back and forth. But if you can get him for a decent price, by all means buy, and he'll probably take you to the championship. Colin, your guy.
Yeah, so my guy's Mr. Jonnu Smith. We touched on him a little bit earlier. He got injured with an ankle injury, but he's expected to be questionable for week 7, so he should probably get in out of questionable instead of like anything like out. But just going off his stats, like I mean, the guy gets around 90% of snaps per week, and week in week out, he has already 5 touchdowns on the year. He's the tight end 2 in standard and the tight end 5 in PPR, and that's only because this past week he only had 39% of snaps, and he already had a bye week. This guy's still in the top 5. So I mean, the guy's a beast. He's an animal. He's a monster. He's gonna be the tight end. Tannehill loves him. So I think you can buy low on him just in case, because some owners that have him might be like, ew, he got 1 point this week because he only caught 1 pass for like 13 yards, when actually he was injured like mid game. So I think there's some owners out there that might try to move him, and it's the same thing as like Miles Sanders. He's injured. Try and buy him now before Smith comes back and just dominates or continues to dominate. Steven?
So my buy low is Devonte Adams, and it's very similar to the last two guys. He's been dealing with injury this year. He's already missed, I believe he's missed 3 games, and the last game against Tampa Bay, he only put up 9 fantasy points, which is relatively low for a Devonte Adams game. So he's a wide receiver 40 roughly in fantasy right now, and he's not going to be free. This is the exact same. I'm going to talk exactly what Mike did about Miles Sanders. He's not going to be free, but I think you could get him discounted, and I think he's going to win a championship for you at the end of season. I just wanted to, because right now you're kind of looking at your record, whether you're what are we in week 6, 4-2, 3-3. You're looking at the playoffs already. You're looking at matchups. And Devontae Adams in week 14, 15, 16 has the Detroit Lions, the Panthers, and the Titans. So those are 3 defense. Like the Titans just got torched. I don't know if that's because it was just a high scoring game, but their defense hasn't been great. But Devontae Adams is somebody that's going to win you a championship if he's on your team, I believe, and I think you should try to get him at a discounted price if you can right now. Colin?
Yep. So we got lastly the 3 cuts. Mike, who's your cut
I
or
mean,
drop?
my cut is kind of an obvious one. I don't know if anyone really has him, if anyone picked him up, because Bell got released, but that's Frank Gore, and he stinks. He's old. He'll be in the league for a couple more years, but cut those, cut him. Just get rid of him because the Jets stink. I mean, the offense is in hyperdrive and scoring 0 points. So yeah, that's all I gotta say.
Mm-hmm.
Colin.
Yeah, so I got Marvin Jones, and it's been really unfortunate with Marvin Jones. I mean, he's a guy that I thought that have some upside to his like game, especially with Stafford back. He's shown in the past that he's been a very good wide receiver as the second option, especially behind Galladay. And I mean, he's only had really 1 week that you could actually play him and be kind of okay, like kind of happy, was week 2 against Green Bay when he had a touchdown. But besides that, he's put up like basically a point a week, and I don't know. He's not what he was. He was my sleeper, I think, in week. I remember in our episode 1, we talked about fantasy sleepers. I think he was one of my sleepers, and he's the wide receiver 82 in standard and 84 in PPR. So I don't see the uptick to keep him on your bench. I think he's just going to sit there and waste space. So I would definitely cut him. Steven?
Yeah, I agree with both takes. Marvin Jones might have a big enough name still in fantasy to maybe try to salvage like he'd be a throw in on a trade to get somebody possibly just because of his name, and you could try to talk up like he is he's going to go off at some point this year because he will. We all know it's just, do you really want him wasting a spot on your bench until then? So, but Frank Gore, get him off your team, and please don't even think about picking him up. So I have Andy Dalton. We watched him play on the big Monday Night Football, and he looked terrible. He looked absolutely garbage. And please get him off your roster. Find somebody else to start. And do not start him against Washington, because Washington actually, their D line doesn't look terrible. I think they're gonna get to Dalton a couple times, and Dalton's gonna not be good. My
Oh,
opinion. Mike, do you like Dalton?
I don't like Dalton. I liked Dak because he actually can move a little bit, but they just lost their, like, they had a backup left tackle playing because their original left tackle got hurt, and this guy just underwent knee surgery, so that's another injury. And I believe their guard Zach Martin is still in concussion protocol. He took a knee to the head in the game. I really just don't see Andy Dalton having any fantasy value. I mean, in a super flex, if you're desperate, but I really don't. I really just don't see it. Colin, what are you thinking, Andy Dalton?
Yeah, I don't want anything of that offense. You see the news come out today too that some it leaked. Some of the Cowboy players are like they have no idea what's going on. They have no idea what they're doing back there, and they're like, yeah, this guy has they have no planning like during the game. Like they have like their script and that's it. Like their 15 plays and that's it. They have no idea what they're doing out there. So yeah, I wouldn't want any of that offense or that defense. Like I mean, that team's a mess. But I
Yeah,
mean,
I saw that
yeah,
and I was just like, what is going on here? But
it's just insane. Let's close out this show though. We got some top waiver wire ads. So we'll just list them off real quick and then we'll just talk on a few. So Mr. Number one, probably the top guy that's gonna get picked up this week, Boston Scott from the Philadelphia Eagles. You know, Miles Sanders went down for they say 1 to 2 weeks. He's gonna be in at least this Thursday night. Definitely, if you going into bye weeks and injuries, he's a good pickup. So definitely pick him up. Number two, JaMychal Hasty. Again, same thing. Mostert went down with injury. We talked about it already. Hasty's coming in as probably the second option, maybe the third with Wilson. We got Trey Burton. Then we got T. Higgins, who's still on the waiver wire somehow. Travis Fulgham, who's also on the waiver wire still. Then we got Tim Patrick. So I don't really need to talk much on these guys unless you guys have anything really to say. What do you think, Mike, on your guys?
I had Trey Burton, uh, T. Higgins. I mean, I'd be surprised if T. Higgins is still on the waiver wire, but if he is, I mean, take him. He's already surpassed AJ Green for that number one receiver spot. Well, next to
Tyler
Tyler
Boyd.
Boyd. Yep, that's it. But I mean, he looks like a downfield threat, and I think that he's great. Trey Burton, the Colts tight ends, the lowest they've scored this season is 7.9 points by Steve's boy Jack Doyle. I see them as a consistent floor. Philip Rivers loves the tight end, and with Mo Ali Cox out, Trey Burton looks like he's almost just taken over, and I like him rest of season if he doesn't get injured, which is a big ask. But yeah, T. Higgins, Trey Burton, Steve, who are you targeting on the waiver wire this week?
Tim Patrick, because he's a Bronco. Tim Patrick would be my number one guy if he's still there, and he's just been dominant. He's put up over 100 yards receiving in the last 2 games, and he had 8 targets and 7 targets. I think with Drew Lock coming back from an injury, he's going to get better each game, and I think you're going to see Tim Patrick get better as well. I think Judy is probably my number one guy still, even though Tim Patrick has just been dominant. Tim Patrick just looks big out there, 6'4", 215 pounds. So he's my number one guy. Colin.
Yeah. Again, Boston Scott Thursday night, pick him up, and then Hasty if you want. It's a little bit of a sleeper, but like I said earlier in the show, 9 attempts on the ground, 37 yards, 4.1 yard to carry. If he potentially gets into like 25 to like 30% of the snaps, like maybe he does some explosive things because he looked really good with those 9 carries. So yeah, they're a run heavy to offense. It'll be interesting to see how they utilize him moving forward. And if Mostert's out for 3 weeks, you have 3 weeks of Hasty at least. So that's basically it. I don't know if you guys have anything else really to say before we close out the show, but if you do, say something now.
I'm good. It's a weird season. COVID will still happen, so keep your eyes on Twitter. But Steve, you got anything?
Nope, no, I'm good. Colin, take us out.
Awesome. All right, boys. That was episode 25. We really appreciate you guys all listening. Follow our Twitter account at day1football, our Instagram account day1ff. Subscribe, rate, and review the podcast on all the major platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. Also subscribe to our YouTube channel. Mike's been killing it, posting videos like for every episode recently. So if you want to go see our ugly mugs and talk some fantasy football, we're on YouTube as well. So thanks again so much, guys, for listening. And please have a great day. Peace.
See ya.
Bye.